And what I asked them to do was, I actually started making the video there, but the studio I'd been given had a sprung floor, so the moment they stepped forward, the video kind of went haywire. But I asked them to imagine, let me just see, oh yes, here's my artist's impression of what you'll see later. So I don't know how, Miriam, you feeling about that, but I think the team here have done a great job in making the hanging screen and everything. But I asked the gymnasts to. They didn't know what was coming. They came in one by one. I had a few minutes with each girl. They were quite young. They were all part of elite squads who train every night of the week, so they're really in this long-term groove of training. And I asked them to imagine that they were actually about to perform a vault in a really important competition. And as it was the latter stages of the competition and kind of everything hung on nailing this particular move. And how that actually works is in major competitions, the gymnasts will stand just to one side of the runway and they have to wait for the former competitor's score to come up. Once it's up, they have 30 seconds to present formally to the judge and then to go. And if they don't follow those formalities, they're disqualified. And occasionally it happens in the Olympics that the defending champion will be disqualified because some minor error of forgetting to present or being out of time. So it's quite a stress kind of point psychologically. And sometimes they can wait for ages if the judges are debating another score. Sometimes it happens quite quickly. So I told these young girls that I wanted them to imagine they were in that position and that they had to, when they saw the score come up, then they had 30 seconds and they could go in their own time, but that was what they needed to do. And it was an interesting experiment. I repeated it once with one girl and immediately it was ruined. She knew what was coming and she became very knowing. So I was really interested, to get back to today's theme, in the difference between the interiority, the psychological strength needed to kind of pull it all together and put everything into that physical action. But also and in the video, I focus in much more on the face. So I'm really interested in the difference between when they're preparing themselves mentally and when they suddenly become public. And some of them, eyes down, don't look at the camera. Some of them look straight at the camera. But either way, you see this complete transition between when they're really in here and when they're suddenly out with us. Although when they're out presenting to the judge, again, it's another kind of layer of where are they there? You know, is this another kind of false layer? So there's hopefully a lot going on. It's a very simple piece, so you can have a look at it later. So just to wrap up with a few other pieces, Pinnacle, which you saw in the installation. This was shot at the World Championships, and I've shown my computer digital planning because you can see better on this slide. I selected images from the vaulting finals where either the image was slightly soft because the gymnast was moving or because the focus was slightly out, but also images where there was some kind of interaction from lighting in the arena, or the gymnasts were bandaged or some of them had flesh spray on skin. So from a distance, you have this kind of very powerful thrusting imagery, which kind of references all those historic images and kind of the Soviet constructivist idea of this kind of health, youth, sport, which is carried forward in kind of a lot of sports photography, if not art-related projects. But then as you close in on it, there's a much more subtle difference. The work is made by this fragility of the actual image. And I wanted to show something that would, I'm interested in this kind of perfect performance, but I was also interested in photography, and these are the kind of images that would be rejected by professional photographers for some kind of unacceptable failure of technique, and by the gymnasts, physique. They don't want to show these bits. So despite making them, with this state-of-the-art camera and being at the World Championships with the world press, it wouldn't have been possible without that. But these are not images that we get to see so often. A counterpoint to Pinnacle is Peak. This is a very simple portrait taken when I was shooting on film in the gym. And I just wanted to do something really simple that just shows the exceptional physique of a 14-year-old girl in 2010, I think I took this one. This piece also has a relationship to the signature work of The Refusal, which is my dog project, which is mounted the same way in that very heavy white frame with the work at the back and a kind of almost contained like a specimen. And in this work, I made a work called 12 Dogs, 12 Bitches, which all the best show dogs from around Britain were brought to me and photographed as the breeder's picture breed. So it's very, you all know how it looks. Side-on view of an animal, they don't look at you, perfectly posed. This particular dog took this step out of line, and it was this act of refusal and act of resistance that really interested me, despite still having the string round its neck that we were using to mimic the show lead. So the gymnast, however, was much more compliant than the dog. This is the performance installation where local gymnasts then came in, and later on, when the show travelled, I worked with the Welsh national squad. Each gymnast slowly performing, but immaculately, one particular move, and they then did it in turn. And this was taken just before the opening happened. So as the opening happened, people then clustered around and moved around, and I insisted the girls would act like automatons. So it was nothing like a normal gymnastics performance. They became my artworks, and they were really just demonstrating the precision needed and the repetition and the rigor and the commitment needed to be able to pull off the more complicated moves. So here, my own Space Force constructions. I was interested in fusing this visual language of the constructivists who believed in the sublimation of individual expression for the greater good of the masses, to look at more contemporary experiences and to expose the effort of the individual athletes as they perform within these tightly described rules and conventions of competition. And my own Space Force constructions were a combination of image and sculpture. These are the sketchbook layouts. Space Force construction number 1, United States of America. So this is the image plate. And I'm interested in this moment of release, so where the experience of mind and body as the gymnast launches herself up. I'm not so interested in the individual celebrity. Space Force construction number 3, India. And again, alternative moments, again, within these kind of perfect performances, but ones we maybe look lighter or give us an alternative way of looking at the body and the performance. And then Space Force construction number 2, China. Again, the face is more obscured by movement, but the hands and feet within these works really, for me, spoke volumes, so that I felt the portrait was more in what was going on in the extremities. So yes, my handcrafted process based on a children's book that describes how to make perfect solids out of drinking straws and paper clips. I was having a go, and I had fairly mutant geometries being produced, and I really liked the awkwardness of it, so I incorporated this into my powder-coated aluminium structures, which also mimic the colours of Rodchenko's Pure Colours. It was a happy coincidence that the pure red colour, pure yellow colour, and pure blue, which the pigment is now black, coincided with images that I'd pulled out as interesting to me, and coincidentally also emerging superpowers. The constructions also drew on more contemporary influences. I live very close to the site of the Olympic Stadium, which at this point was still being built back in 2011. And for this particular work, it was really important for me to site it in a gallery space, kind of to slow down the way we consume images, sports images particularly, and maybe offer a way of looking at them as maybe not sports images but something else, to take it out of them being read literally as a document of a particular individual and event. So I wanted a more open interpretation. And despite all the historic references, I'm not interested in nostalgia per se, and I'm not interested in a continuum between the kind of political ideas, more like just saying, where are we now? What are we up to? So I was attempting to look at a contemporary moment in gymnastics and in photography. This is a book that is about to come out. It's been rather long in the making, but I produced a gathering of artists last year at the Whitechapel Gallery in London. It was ostensibly, we were invited as a response to the Olympics, an artistic response to the Olympics, but we looked at ideas of perfection and how ideas of perfection have shaped photography and lens-based media, but also how photography has contributed to ideas of perfection. And so, yeah, there's a really interesting roll call of artists and writers and discussion that happened, and so that will be coming out very soon. And I'm going to leave you with this image, which is a life-size portrait of a young woman, actually a Canadian gymnast. It's called Cross, and it was the other product of my residency at the Art Gallery of Ontario and my collaboration with the gymnasts at Oshawa. When I was in Britain, I worked for quite a long time with several clubs and the British Gymnastics and the International Gymnastics Federation, but I met a lot of resistance to the idea of producing this image. In fact, I waited 6 months before bringing it up at Heathrow. I had a sense that it wasn't going to go down too well. And the coach, when I described what I wanted to do, said it wasn't a move that the women performed. So I said, well, I understand that. The women have different apparatus, but that was the point of the image. And he really wasn't willing to go there. He was saying, it's not feminine, think of something else. And there was a kind of line drawn under it. So my day one of my residency, I drove out to Oshawa, and the Oshawa Gemini Gymnastics Club is run by Elena Davidova, who was the 1980 all-round Olympic champion in Moscow. And my personal experience of Russian coaches has been quite fearsome in my youth, so I was not sure what to expect, but Elena was wonderful. I went straight for the jugular and explained what I wanted to do, and she immediately said, yep. And she arranged for her gymnast to come in a little early from school, and we made this image. So it's a very simple portrait of a woman in this iconic move that the men all perform, and it's called Cross. So that's it. I just want to, before I finish, thank everybody here for inviting me and making me so welcome. But also AMIA in Toronto actually organised my flight for me, so I need to thank them. And also this work has had a lot of public funding through commissions and Arts Council grants. So just very quickly, a Pavilion Commission, a photography bursary from the National Media Museum in England, Arts Council England, Arts Council Wales, and the Art Gallery of Ontario, who funded the work at the residency. So thank you, and hope to see you in the space.